Imagine being born with nothing. No money, no land, no powerful family name, no one to help you. Now imagine dying as the richest man in America. This is not a fairy tale. This is the true story of one man who changed history. A man who started with a small boat and ended with an empire. His name was Cornelius Vanderbilt, and his story will change the way you think about your own life forever. Let us go back in time. Back to a small farm on Staten Island, New York. The year was 1794. America was still a very young country. The streets were not paved with gold. Life was hard, really hard. Most families worked from sunrise to sunset just to put food on the table. And in a small wooden house near the water, a baby boy was born. His parents named him Cornelius. His father was a farmer and a ferryman. He used a small boat to carry people and goods across the water between Staten Island and Manhattan. It was not a glamorous life. It was a rough life, a simple life. But it was honest work, and young Cornelius watched his father every single day. Cornelius was not a quiet child. He was loud. He was bold. He had energy that seemed to never run out. He loved the water. He loved the boats. And from a very young age, he knew one thing. He did not want to be poor his whole life. School was not easy for Cornelius. He struggled with reading and writing. The letters on the page seemed to dance and confuse him. His teachers were not always patient. Some of them told him he was not smart enough. Some of them told him he would never be anything great. He felt those words deep in his chest. But he did not let them stop him. His mother, Phoebe, was a strong woman. She worked hard every day. She cooked, she cleaned, she helped on the farm, and she raised a large family. But she always had time to talk to Cornelius. One evening, when he was about 9 years old, she sat beside him near the fire. "Cornelius," she said quietly, "do you know what your biggest problem is?" He looked up at her with big brown eyes. "I don't know, Mama. Maybe I'm just not smart." She shook her head slowly. "No, that is not true. Your problem is that you do not believe in yourself yet, but I believe in you, and someday you will too." He did not fully understand those words at that age, but he never forgot them. By the time Cornelius was 11 years old, he was already working. He helped his father on the boat. He learned how to steer. He learned how to read the wind and the water. He learned how to talk to customers and how to work hard without complaining. The water became his classroom, and life became his teacher. At age 16, something important happened. Cornelius made a deal with his mother. He told her he wanted to buy his own small boat and start his own ferry service. But he did not have enough money. He asked her to lend him $100. $100 was a lot of money in 1810. His mother looked at him for a long time. She could see the fire in his eyes. She could hear the determination in his voice. "I will give you the money," she said. "But you must earn it first. You must plow that whole field before spring comes." He nodded without hesitation. "I will do it, Mama. I promise." And he did. Day after day, through cold mornings and tired evenings, Cornelius plowed that field. He did not stop. He did not complain. He worked until the whole field was done. And when it was finished, his mother handed him the money. With $100 in his pocket and a fire in his heart, Cornelius Vanderbilt bought his first boat, a small, flat-bottomed boat called a periauger. It was not fancy, it was not big, but it was his, and that changed everything. He started ferrying passengers and goods between Staten Island and Manhattan. He woke up before the sun. He worked until dark. He was 16 years old, doing the work of a grown man, and he was good at it. Very good. His prices were fair. His service was reliable. People started to trust him. Word spread. More customers came. By the end of his first year, Cornelius had not only paid back his mother's loan, he had also saved his own money on top of that. His mother was proud. His father was impressed. But Cornelius was not satisfied. He never let success make him lazy. Every time he reached a goal, he looked ahead to the next one. Over the next few years, he expanded his small ferry operation. He added more boats. He hired workers. He learned to manage people. He learned to manage money. He made mistakes along the way. He hired the wrong people sometimes. He lost money on a few bad decisions. But every failure taught him something new. One of the most important lessons he learned early was this: work harder than everyone around you and never stop learning. He saw other ferry operators who were older and more experienced. He studied how they worked. He copied what was good. He improved on what was not. When the War of 1812 began, opportunity came knocking. The American government needed boats to supply forts and military posts around New York. Cornelius saw this clearly. While others saw danger, he saw a chance. He bid on contracts to supply those forts, and he won. During the war years, he made more money than ever before. He worked day and night. He pushed through exhaustion. He pushed through fear. And when the war ended, he had built a small but solid business and saved a decent amount of money. But then came a moment that surprised everyone, including himself. Cornelius heard about a new technology that was changing the world. Steam power. Steamboats. These were boats powered by steam engines, not by sails or oars. They were faster, they were stronger, and they were the future. A businessman named Thomas Gibbons owned a steam ferry line. He was looking for someone capable to manage and captain his boats. Cornelius heard about the job, and even though he would have to give up running his own boats, he took the position. People thought he was crazy. Why would a young man with his own business go work for someone else? But Cornelius had a plan. He wanted to learn everything about the steamboat business from the inside. He wanted to understand the technology. He wanted to understand the roots. He wanted to understand the business model. And he knew the best way to learn was to be inside it. So he went to work for Thomas Gibbons. He became the captain of Gibbons' steamboat, and he threw himself into the job completely. The work was not easy. There were legal troubles. At the time, New York State had given a monopoly on steamboat travel to a powerful company owned by Robert Livingston and Robert Fulton. This meant other companies were not legally allowed to run steamboats in New York waters. Gibbons wanted to challenge this monopoly, and Cornelius was right in the middle of the fight. Every time Cornelius ran his steamboat into New York waters, agents of the monopoly tried to arrest him. There were days when he had to hide below the deck of his own boat. There were days when legal papers were thrown at him. There were days when it felt like the whole system was against him. But Cornelius did not run away. He laughed at the danger. He kept sailing. He kept running the routes. He was bold in a way that shocked even his employer. His wife, Sophia, waited for him at home during those wild years. They had married when Cornelius was 19 years old. Sophia was patient, strong, and deeply loyal. She understood the man she had married. She knew he was not ordinary, and she supported him even when the future felt uncertain. There were nights when Cornelius came home tired and frustrated. He would sit at the kitchen table and rub his face in his hands. "Sophia," he said one night, "sometimes I wonder if all this fighting is worth it." She brought him a cup of tea and sat across from him. "Do you believe you are doing the right thing?" He thought for a moment. "Yes, people deserve a choice. They deserve fair prices. The monopoly is squeezing everyone dry." "Then keep fighting," she said simply. "Right things take time." He looked at her and felt his strength return. The legal battle continued all the way to the United States Supreme Court. In 1824, the Supreme Court made a historic decision. The case was called Gibbons versus Ogden. The court ruled that the government could not allow monopolies on interstate waterways. It was a massive victory, not just for Gibbons, but for the entire country, and Cornelius Vanderbilt had been a key part of that battle. He had faced the power of the monopoly without flinching. After years of working for Gibbons, Cornelius had learned everything he needed to know. He had saved his money. He had built his reputation. He had developed his skills. And now he was ready to go out on his own again. He left Gibbons and started his own steamboat company. He was in his mid-30s. Many men his age were already settling into comfortable, quiet lives. But not Cornelius. He was just getting started. He put his boats on routes that were controlled by other companies, and he cut his prices dramatically. Other operators charged $4 for a trip. He charged $1, sometimes even less. People rushed to use his service. His competitors were furious. They could not understand how he could afford to charge so little. But Cornelius had calculated everything carefully. He knew that lower prices would bring more customers. More customers meant more trips. More trips meant more money over time. Even with lower prices, the volume of business would win. His competitors tried to fight back. They cut their prices too. But Cornelius cut his even more. It became a price war, and Cornelius almost always won. Some competitors eventually did something interesting. They paid Cornelius to stay off their routes. They gave him money just to stop competing with them. This was called a buyout. And Cornelius was smart enough to take those deals when they were good ones. He would collect the payment, use the money to start competing on a different route, and do the whole thing again. He became known as the Commodore. People called him that out of respect. He was a master of the water, a king of the steamboat era. By the 1840s, Cornelius Vanderbilt was a wealthy man, but he was not done. He never felt done. That voice in his head, the one that said there is more to do, never went quiet. Then came a moment that opened up a completely new world. In 1848, gold was discovered in California. Thousands of people wanted to get there as fast as possible. There was a problem. Traveling from the east coast of America to California by land was incredibly long and dangerous. It took months. People were desperate for a faster route. Cornelius saw the opportunity immediately. He proposed a route through Nicaragua, a country in Central America. Ships would travel from New York to the coast of Nicaragua. Passengers would cross Nicaragua by river and land. Then they would board another ship on the Pacific side and travel up to California. Other companies already had a route through Panama. But Vanderbilt's Nicaragua route was shorter, and he was going to make it work. He went to Nicaragua himself to scout the route. He got on a small riverboat and navigated the San Juan River, which no large boat had gone through before. His engineers told him it was impossible. The river was too shallow in some places. The rocks were too dangerous. Cornelius sat at the front of the boat and looked at the river ahead of him. "Impossible?" he said with a slow smile. "That just means nobody has done it yet." He personally piloted the boat through dangerous sections of the river. He found the way through. He mapped the route, and he came back and told his team, "It can be done, and we will do it." He formed the Accessory Transit Company. He negotiated a deal with the Nicaraguan government for the rights to operate. He built a road across part of Nicaragua. He set up the whole system, and he opened the route. His service was cheaper and faster than the competition. Thousands of gold rush travelers used his route to get to California. He made enormous amounts of money, and once again, he had beaten his competition by thinking differently and working harder. During this period, Cornelius faced personal challenges too. Some of the men who worked with him tried to cheat him. While he was away on a trip to Europe, two of his own business partners stole control of the accessory transit company from him. They thought he was old. They thought he was too far away to fight back. They were wrong. Cornelius wrote a short and legendary letter to those men. The letter said, "Gentlemen, you have undertaken to cheat me. I won't sue you, for law is too slow. I'll ruin you." And he did. He came back. He fought back. He used every legal and business tool available to him. And within a short time, he had taken back control and destroyed the men who had betrayed him. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate Cornelius Vanderbilt. Never. By the 1860s, Cornelius was already in his late 60s. Most men at that age were thinking about rest, about slowing down, about enjoying the years they had left. But Cornelius Vanderbilt was looking at railroads. Railroads were the new future. Steam had moved from water to land, and the railroad industry was growing fast. Cornelius had watched the industry carefully for years. Now he was ready to move. He started buying stock in railroads. He started on the New York and Harlem Railroad. This was a small and struggling railroad in New York. People thought it was a bad investment. Cornelius disagreed. He bought control of the company. He improved the management. He cut unnecessary costs. He improved the service, and the railroad started making money. Then he expanded. He took control of the Hudson River Railroad. He merged it with the Harlem Line. Then he went after the most important prize of all, the New York Central Railroad. This was a major line that connected New York City to the Great Lakes. It was one of the most important railroads in America. Acquiring the New York Central was not easy. The owners did not want to sell. But Cornelius was patient and strategic. He used his control of connecting railroads to pressure them. He had the power to stop transferring passengers and goods to their line. Without those connections, the New York Central would suffer greatly. Eventually, Cornelius got what he wanted. He took control of the New York Central, and then he merged everything together into one giant system, which became known as the New York Central Railroad System. It was one of the greatest business moves in American history. He did not stop there. He wanted to connect New York City all the way to Chicago. He kept buying and merging railroads. His network grew and grew. He was building the transportation backbone of a nation. He also built one of the most famous train stations in the world, Grand Central Depot in New York City. It was massive. It was beautiful. It was a symbol of his power and vision. People walked into that station and felt amazed. Today, a newer version of that station, called Grand Central Terminal, still stands in New York City. It still welcomes millions of people every year. It is part of his legacy. While Cornelius was building his empire, he was also growing old. His hair turned white. His body slowed down. His wife, Sophia, the woman who had stood beside him for so many decades, fell ill. She had given him 13 children and a lifetime of loyalty and love. When Sophia became very sick, Cornelius stayed by her side. The great Commodore, the man who had never shown weakness in business, sat beside his wife's bed and held her hand. "You have been the best part of my life," he told her quietly. Sophia looked at him with tired but loving eyes. "You never stopped. Not for one day," she said softly. "I always loved that about you." She passed away in 1868. Cornelius grieved deeply. He was a tough man, but losing Sophia broke something soft inside him that he had always tried to hide. A few years later, he remarried. His new wife was a younger woman named Frank Crawford. She brought some lightness back into his later years. But business never stopped calling to him. Even in his old age, Cornelius was thinking about expansion, thinking about the future, thinking about what came next. He also thought more and more about his legacy. What would he leave behind? What would his name mean after he was gone? He gave money to a small, struggling university in Nashville, Tennessee. He donated $1 million to the school. In return, the school was renamed in his honor. It became Vanderbilt University. Today, it is one of the most respected universities in America. It has educated generations of scientists, lawyers, doctors, and leaders, and it carries his name to this day. Some people in his life were surprised by this gift. They had always seen him as a man purely focused on business and money. But Cornelius understood something important. Money without meaning is just numbers. He wanted to give something lasting to the world. Inside his family, though, things were not always peaceful. He had many children, and money can bring as many problems as it solves when a family is large and complex. His son William was quiet and careful. He did not have his father's fire, at least not on the surface. Cornelius sometimes doubted whether William had what it took to run the empire. One day, Cornelius was talking to William about the railroads. He was frustrated with something William had done. He was direct, as always. "William," he said, "do you understand what I have built here? Do you understand how much work this took?" William looked at his father steadily. "Yes, father, I do." "Then do not let it fall apart," Cornelius said. "Do not ever be afraid to make a hard decision. Fear is the enemy of success." William listened, and over time, William proved himself. He was not his father in style, but he was smart and capable, and Cornelius eventually trusted him with the empire. The relationship between Cornelius and his children was complicated. Some of his children received less than others in his will. Some were cut out almost entirely. This caused arguments and legal battles after his death. It showed that even the greatest men have complicated personal lives. Even the richest man in America could not perfectly solve the puzzle of family. But in business, his record was nearly perfect. He had started with nothing. He had built an empire worth over $100 million at the time of his death. That was an almost unimaginable amount of money in the 1870s. In today's money, it would be worth many, many billions of dollars. He was almost certainly the wealthiest person in America, and one of the wealthiest in the entire world. How did he do it? People have asked that question for over 150 years, and the answer is not one simple thing. It was many things working together. He worked harder than anyone around him. He never used the excuse of being tired, or young, or poor, or uneducated. He took what he had and pushed it as far as it could go, and then he pushed further. He was never afraid of competition. He welcomed it. He saw competitors not as enemies to fear, but as problems to solve. And he solved them with strategy, patience, and relentless effort. He was always watching for the next big thing. Sailboats gave way to steamboats. He moved to steamboats. Steamboats gave way to railroads. He moved to railroads. He never got comfortable with yesterday's success. He always kept one eye on tomorrow. He made decisions based on logic, not emotion. He did not make choices because they felt good. He made choices because they made sense. He calculated risks. He studied the numbers. And he trusted his own judgment even when others doubted him. He was not perfect. He was tough and sometimes harsh. He could be cruel in competition. He was not always a kind father or an easy man to live with. He had flaws like every human being, but his drive, his vision, and his will were extraordinary. As he grew very old, his health slowly declined. The man who had once physically piloted boats through dangerous rivers and worked 16-hour days was now moving slowly. He was in his 80s. His body was tired, even if his mind still burned bright. In January of 1877, Cornelius Vanderbilt passed away at the age of 82. The news spread across the country. Newspapers carried long articles about his life. People who had never met him felt the weight of his passing. America had lost one of its most remarkable figures. He left behind an estate worth over $100 million. He left behind a railroad network that stretched across a huge part of the northeastern United States. He left behind a university that continues to shape young minds to this day. He left behind a family name that became one of the most recognized in American history. But he also left behind something that no amount of money can buy. A story, a true, remarkable, inspiring story about what one human being can do when they refuse to accept the life they were given and decide to build the life they want. Now, here is something important to think about. Cornelius Vanderbilt never read many books. He was not a university graduate. He did not have wealthy parents or powerful connections when he started. He had none of the things that people often say are necessary for success. What he had was simpler and much harder to buy. He had belief in himself. Even when teachers told him he was not smart, even when competitors tried to crush him, even when the law tried to stop him, even when people he trusted betrayed him, even when grief tried to break him, he kept believing. He had courage, the kind of courage that does not feel like courage in the moment. It just feels like doing the next necessary thing, even when you are scared, getting in the boat even when the water is rough, showing up even when showing up is hard. He had patience, real patience, not the kind of patience where you sit and wait for things to happen. The kind of patience where you keep working, keep building, keep moving, even when results are slow to come. He spent years working for someone else to learn what he needed to know. He spent years building one small business before moving to the next. He played the long game. He had vision. He could see things that others could not see yet. He looked at a new technology like the steamboat and saw an opportunity. He looked at a struggling railroad and saw its potential. He looked at a route through Nicaragua and saw a path where others saw only obstacles. And he had hunger, the kind of hunger that does not go away when you become comfortable, the kind of hunger that keeps you up at night thinking about what you could do next. That never satisfied, always reaching hunger that drives a person to keep climbing long after others have stopped. Think about the 16-year-old boy plowing a field in the cold to earn $100. Think about the young man hiding under the deck of his own boat to avoid being arrested by monopoly agents. Think about the businessman in his 60s, when most men are retiring, buying his first railroad and building an entirely new empire. Think about how many times he was told no. How many times doors were slammed in his face? How many times people underestimated him, dismissed him, tried to cheat him, tried to stop him? And think about how he responded every single time. He did not give up. He did not shrink. He went bigger. He moved faster. He worked harder. And he won. There is a moment in every person's life when they stand at a crossroads, when they have to decide what kind of life they are going to live, when they have to decide whether they will accept the limits others place on them, or whether they will break through those limits and discover what they are truly capable of. Cornelius Vanderbilt faced that moment when he was a young boy struggling at school. He faced it when he was a teenager asking his mother for a loan. He faced it every single time someone told him something was impossible, and every single time he made the same choice. He chose to keep going. There is something deeply human about his story. He was not born special. He did not have magic. He did not have perfect luck. He had struggle. He had setbacks. He had loss. He had grief, he had doubt, just like every human being. But he also had something that no one could take from him. That belief his mother planted in him when he was a boy sitting by the fire. That whisper inside him that said, "You can do more. You can be more. Do not stop now." His mother, Phoebe, never lived to see the full height of what her son became. But she saw enough. She saw the boy she believed in become a man who proved that belief right. And maybe that is one of the most beautiful parts of the whole story. Behind the empire, behind the boats and the railroads and the millions of dollars, there was a mother who sat by a fire and told a struggling boy that she believed in him. Never underestimate the power of one person's belief in another. As we close this story, let us take one last look at the life of Cornelius Vanderbilt. From a small wooden house on Staten Island to the man who built the railroad backbone of a nation. From a boy who struggled to read to a man whose name was written in history books forever. From $100 borrowed from his mother to an empire worth over $100 million. He was not perfect. He was fierce. He was complicated. He was driven. He was real. He was one of the greatest examples in all of American history of what a human being can achieve when they combine belief, courage, hard work, vision, and relentless determination. His railroad tracks are still there. His university is still standing. His name is still remembered. And his story is still teaching people what is possible. What about you? What is your boat? What is the thing you want to build? What is the route others say is impossible that you know you can navigate? Maybe you are standing at the beginning with very little, wondering how anyone ever gets from here to there. Let Cornelius Vanderbilt answer that question for you. You get there one decision at a time, one day at a time, one brave choice at a time. You plow the field, you earn the money, you buy the boat, you get on the water, and you never stop sailing. That is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives. That is the lesson of Cornelius Vanderbilt. And that lesson belongs to anyone who is willing to use it. Moral of the story: no matter where you begin in life, your starting point does not decide your destination. Hard work, belief in yourself, the courage to face failure, and the will to never give up can take an ordinary person to extraordinary places. Success is not given. It is built day by day, choice by choice, and boat by boat.